Imagine this scene. You're out, maybe in a busy restaurant, could be a celebration, could be just dinner, and suddenly someone at another table starts choking. It's awful, right? Pure panic.
Yeah, terrifying.
But now, imagine this. Imagine that person, instead of, grabbing their throat, asking for help, they're so worried about being seen like that, looking weak or helpless, that they actually get up and try to make it to the restroom.
Oh, wow, to hide.
To hide their struggle. And unbelievably, there are these stories, anecdotes from people who work in restaurants where that person died alone in the bathroom.
Just to avoid the embarrassment.
Just to avoid the perceived shame of being vulnerable enough to need help in public.
It's almost hard to believe, isn't it, that the fear of how you look could actually override your basic instinct to survive.
It seems crazy.
But that story, and, similar ones, you hear the person trying to hide chest pains on a train, or someone who's lost but just refuses to ask for directions, they really shine a light on this fundamental, deeply human paradox we're going to dig into in this deep dive.
Okay.
We are sort of culturally conditioned, aren't we, to think vulnerability means weakness.
Yeah.
We see it as risky. Like putting yourself out there makes you a target in a world that often feels, competitive, like survival of the fittest.
Right, don't show weakness.
Exactly. The fear of being wounded, emotionally or socially, of being judged or rejected, or someone taking advantage if you show any crack in your armor, it's profound. It makes us build up these serious barricades, these walls around ourselves.
Emotional fortifications.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And as that opening story just tragically shows, sometimes the price of keeping those defenses up is just incredibly high, even fatal.
It really drives home how powerful that fear is. And it links straight into that feeling so many of us have, that little nagging voice inside that says, I'm not good enough.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
I'm not thin enough, or smart enough, successful enough, calm enough, whatever your particular enough is. And that feeling, it seems tied to this excruciating vulnerability, doesn't it? The terrifying thought that for real connection, for someone to really see you, you have to let them see, all of it.
Mm-hmm. The messy parts, too.
The parts you usually hide. And letting yourself be seen, like really seen, feels like the absolute riskiest thing imaginable.
It absolutely does feel that way. And that feeling is incredibly common. You're right.
Right.
But what happens if we start to question that assumption? What if that thing we see as weakness is actually a profound source of strength?
That's the core question.
It's exactly the mission for this deep dive. We've gathered a whole stack of source materials, research studies from psychology, neuroscience, talk to some experts on human behavior and leadership, articles looking at personal growth and how things work in offices, and we're going to unpack this whole idea of vulnerability. Our goal here is to cut through the confusion, pull out the really important insights, the surprising findings, and hopefully some practical wisdom. Think of this as like your shortcut to understanding how deliberately choosing to embrace vulnerability can lead to much deeper connections, real resilience, and honestly, a more fulfilling life in almost every area.
Okay, let's really dig into that fear first, because clearly it's potent. You mentioned cultural conditioning. Where does this deep reluctance to show any vulnerability actually come from? Why is it so hardwired in us to think needing help or admitting a mistake makes us weak?
Well, it's definitely got a few layers. On one level, there's that cultural story, especially maybe in Western cultures, that really celebrates independence, being stoic, never showing weakness.
The strong, silent type.
Exactly. We're told, be strong, suck it up, don't let them see you sweat. And you see that reinforced everywhere, from, superhero movies to the kind of corporate culture that often praises decisive leaders who seem totally effortless.
Right, never ruffled.
We kind of inherit this view, don't we? From family, school, work. It's all around us.
But you said there were other layers.
Yes, there's also perhaps something more primal going on. As you said earlier, vulnerability literally means the capacity to be wounded. Now, if you think about our early ancestors, in a genuinely dangerous world, a wounded person was at much greater risk.
Sure, slower, weaker.
Right. More likely to be picked off by a predator or challenged by a rival. So there might be this very ancient instinctual warning signal tied to showing any kind of weakness or injury.
Ah, an evolutionary echo.
Possibly. And we carry that forward into our modern social world, where the danger isn't usually a saber-toothed tiger, but it feels just as real. The danger of being excluded, judged, maybe even exploited by people who see our vulnerability as a chance to get one up on us.
So it's not just society telling us to be tough. There might be this deep-seated biological reason to fear exposure to, and that fear of being judged or looking stupid or flawed, especially when it really matters, like at work or with people we love. That becomes the main reason we build those walls, right?
Yeah.
Hiding the parts we think aren't enough.
Precisely. It feels like self-preservation, even if sometimes it's a misguided kind.
And going back to the choking story or hiding chest pains or even just, not admitting you didn't understand something in a meeting.
Or pretending you're confident when you're actually terrified inside.
Yeah. These aren't just random incidents. They're really stark, sometimes fatal examples of what happens when we prioritize looking strong or self-sufficient over the simple, vulnerable act of asking for help or admitting confusion or just showing how we actually feel.
That drive to keep up the facade, to pretend we don't need anything from anyone, that's what builds those barricades. It isolates us, personally and professionally. It's like we're burning all this energy just maintaining this perfect, bulletproof exterior.
And the sources we looked at really argued that this constant defense, this armor, isn't where true strength is found at all.
Not at all. They challenge that conventional wisdom directly. The research suggests that the most resilient people, the most deeply connected people, even the most effective teams and leaders, aren't the ones who build the highest walls.
Who are they then?
They're the ones who understand that real strength comes from allowing yourself to be seen, authentically. The strength isn't in avoiding vulnerability. It's in the willingness to actually face it and engage with it.
Okay, and this brings us to really understanding words like courage, compassion, and connection differently, right? There's research on people who live what are called wholehearted lives, lives with a strong sense of love and belonging. What do they have in common?
Yes, this is fascinating stuff. These people, the ones with that strong sense of worthiness, love, and belonging, they didn't shy away from the hard stuff. They leaned in. And crucially, they weren't fearless. They just had courage.
Courage, but maybe not in the way we usually think of it.
Exactly. The original meaning of the word courage is so revealing. It comes from the Latin word cor, C-O-R, which means heart. And centuries ago, the original definition wasn't about being physically brave like a soldier or a hero. It was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart.
Wow, to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart.
So the courage these wholehearted individuals had, the courage needed for real connection and belonging, wasn't about not feeling fear. It was simply the courage to be imperfect.
The courage to be imperfect. I like that.
Yeah, the willingness to just show up, be themselves, messy bits and all, even with the fear of being judged or maybe rejected.
That shifts it from something huge and heroic to something, well, human. And compassion was another key trait, you said, but the order was important.
Absolutely critical. These individuals were compassionate, yes, but the key insight from the sources was that this compassion started with themselves. They were kind to themselves first.
You can't pour from an empty cup, sort of thing.
Precisely. You cannot genuinely practice compassion with others if you're constantly beating yourself up internally. Being compassionate towards yourself, treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and empathy you'd offer a good friend who's struggling, remembering that suffering and flaws are just part of being human. That's the foundation.
So self-compassion enables outward compassion and vulnerability.
It's the internal prerequisite. If you can't be kind to yourself when you mess up or feel inadequate, how can you possibly risk showing that imperfection to somebody else?
Yeah.
It makes vulnerability feel way too dangerous.
Okay, that makes sense. And the third piece was connection, which feels like the ultimate goal here for a lot of us.
It often is the goal, yes.
Yeah.
But importantly, their deep connection wasn't achieved by hiding or pretending. It was a result of the other two things, the courage to be imperfect and the self-compassion to handle it. That combination allowed for authenticity.
Authenticity, being real.
They were willing to let go of who they thought they should be in order to simply be who they were. Yeah. And the sources really stress this, that authenticity, that willingness, is absolutely non-negotiable for real connection. True intimacy, trust, belonging, they all require being seen, really seen, for who you authentically are. And that inherently involves vulnerability. You have to lower the drawbridge.
So courage to be imperfect, self-compassion as the base, and authenticity as the path to connection. It sounds like vulnerability isn't just this awful thing we have to endure sometimes. It's actually being described as necessary for these core human experiences.
That's exactly right. The people living these wholehearted lives, they didn't pretend vulnerability wasn't sometimes excruciating, especially when it bumps up against shame or deep fear. But that wasn't their primary view of it. They saw it as simply necessary.
Necessary for what, specifically?
Necessary for really living. Necessary for having the willingness to say, I love you first, not knowing if it'll be said back. Necessary for trying something new, like a creative project or starting a business, with absolutely no guarantees it will work out.
Big risks.
Necessary for just breathing through that awful waiting period after a scary medical test, waiting for the results of a mammogram or a biopsy. Necessary for investing your heart and soul into a relationship that might end or a friendship that might fade.
Those are all moments of huge potential exposure, potential rejection, disappointment, pain. And the idea is you just have to be willing to stand there in that uncertainty.
Yes. The sources emphasize that these acts, while definitely scary and demanding courage, were seen as fundamental to experiencing a rich, meaningful life. It's about being willing to step into those moments, those uncertain spaces, without needing armor, without needing to know the outcome beforehand. It's understanding that the possibility of real joy, deep love, true belonging exists on the other side of that vulnerable step.
Okay, that framework makes a lot of sense. If vulnerability is necessary for living and connecting, then what's the downside, the actual cost of trying to avoid it? The sources mention something about trying to numb the discomfort.
Right, and this is where the stakes become even clearer. The major problem with trying to dodge or suppress or numb those difficult emotions that are just inherently tied to vulnerability, grief, shame, fear, disappointment, uncertainty, is that you can't selectively numb your feelings.
You can't pick and choose which ones to turn on.
Exactly. Think of your emotions less like individual volume knobs and more like a single electrical circuit. When you try to numb the so-called bad stuff, the hard emotions, you inevitably dull all the emotions on that circuit.
So you can't just numb the pain without it affecting everything else, like joy or happiness.
Precisely. When you numb the hard stuff, the fear of being seen, the shame of not being perfect, the grief of loss, the sting of failure, you also numb your capacity for the good stuff. You dampen your ability to feel joy, gratitude, happiness, excitement, true connection. The very things you might be desperately seeking by trying to avoid the pain are the things you end up sacrificing.
Wow. That's a huge cost. Trying to avoid the discomfort of vulnerability actually shrinks your capacity for positive, life-affirming feelings and connection.
That's the core argument from the sources, and it's a really critical point. They even draw a possible connection, kind of a cautionary note, between this widespread numbing behavior and some pretty significant societal issues.
Like what?
The suggestion is that the fact that, statistically speaking, we're living in one of the most in-debt, obese, addicted, and medicated adult populations in, say, U.S. history could, at least in part, be a result of these pervasive attempts to numb discomfort and pain, including the discomfort of vulnerability.
So we're trying to escape the hard feelings through stuff.
Perhaps. Through overspending, overeating, addiction, medication, constant distraction, trying to dull the pain. And in doing so, we might be collectively sacrificing our ability to feel genuine joy, authentic connection, and build real resilience.
That's a really sobering thought. But it makes sense. The very feelings we're running from the discomfort, the fear might actually hold the key to unlocking what we truly want. Joy, connection, meaning. Okay, so moving away from the cost of avoidance, let's get into the tangible research-backed benefits. Beyond the ideas of courage and connection, what does embracing vulnerability actually do for us? What did the sources say?
The benefits are really broad and supported by evidence impacting our health, our relationships, even how we function at work. Let's start with just personal well-being. A key finding is the strong link between living authentically, meaning your actions and words actually line up with your real inner beliefs and feelings, and just feeling better overall.
Because you're not constantly faking it.
Exactly. When you're not spending enormous amounts of energy trying to maintain a facade or fit into some external mold or hide who you really are, that's incredibly draining work.
Like wearing a heavy mask all the time.
That's a great analogy. It's exhausting. And the research shows this isn't just a feeling. Studies find that people who report higher levels of authenticity also report significantly better physical and mental health.
Really? Like what specifically?
Lower levels of stress, fewer symptoms of depression and anxiety, and interestingly, even fewer physical complaints like headaches or stomach problems.
So being true to yourself literally makes you feel better, less stressed, maybe even physically healthier.
The correlation is strong. And think about the opposite, trying to suppress or deny how you feel. There's a study by James Gross mentioned in the sources where people were told to actively suppress their emotions while watching a upsetting film.
Okay.
Not only did they report feeling worse emotionally afterwards compared to those who could just react naturally, but they also did worse on memory tests later.
Huh. So blocking emotions actually messes with your brain.
It suggests the mental effort needed to deny feelings actually impairs other cognitive functions. Just acknowledging and processing your emotions, which is a kind of internal vulnerability, seems vital for both psychological and cognitive health.
This really makes that phrase, revealing is healing, hit differently.
It's a powerful idea, and there's good science behind it. The constant effort of inhibiting yourself, maintaining those emotional defenses, it's not harmless. It acts like a form of chronic stress that can weaken physical systems over time, your immune system, cardiovascular system, nervous system, potentially making you more susceptible to illness.
Whereas letting it out is good for you.
Conversely, the act of revealing your deep thoughts and feelings, especially about difficult or traumatic stuff, can be incredibly cathartic and healing, both mentally and physically.
And the Pennebaker writing studies are the classic proof of this, right?
They're the landmark studies, yes. James Pennebaker's work on expressive writing showed amazing, tangible health benefits. In his study, students who wrote about their deepest thoughts and feelings about something traumatic or upsetting just for 15, 20 minutes a day, for a few days, showed a huge drop, like 50%, in visits to the campus health center in the following months.
Compared to students writing about, what, laundry lists?
Compared to students writing about superficial, unemotional topics. Exactly. It's a clear, measurable link between the vulnerable act of revealing our inner world, especially the hard parts, and improved physical health. A powerful demonstration of healing through expression.
That's incredible. A 50% drop in doctor visits just from writing about feelings.
Yeah.
Okay, so physical health benefits. What about relationships? This feels like the most obvious place vulnerability would matter.
It is, and it's probably where we feel the benefits most directly. Openness, honesty, the willingness to be vulnerable. They are absolutely essential for building and sustaining truly deep, intimate, trusting relationships.
It's how you get close to someone.
It is. Sharing your real thoughts, your feelings, your struggles, fears, hopes, including the parts you're not proud of, that's how you build closeness. It allows for empathy. It creates a mutual understanding that goes way beyond just surface-level chat.
And it kind of creates a positive loop, right? If you open up, it often makes the other person feel safer to do the same.
Precisely. It models the behavior and gives the other person permission. This back-and-forth sharing creates a supportive space where you often find out you're not alone in whatever you're going through. Someone else has felt that exact same way.
That shared feeling is powerful.
Incredibly powerful. It builds an immediate bridge. The sources even point out that this reciprocal self-disclosure, even when you first meet someone, tends to increase liking. People generally feel more positive towards someone who shares appropriately and vice versa. It kind of flies in the face of the fear that opening up will make people push you away.
And that story about the father and son you mentioned earlier, that really captured the depth of this.
It's such a moving example. This father, right after major heart surgery, a moment of intense physical vulnerability, uses that moment to break decades of emotional silence.
Crying in front of his child for the first time.
Yes, crying openly and confessing this 20-year-long suppressed desire to simply hold his child, an incredibly vulnerable act. But the response, the hug, the shared tears, and the father saying, "This is the medicine I've needed," it just perfectly illustrates how expressing those deep needs and feelings, even when they're raw or painful, can unlock profound healing and forge a connection that keeping your guard up could never achieve. And it's not always huge confessions either. The sources mention how even simple words like please and thank you are acts of vulnerability.
How so?
Well, saying please admits you need or want help, you can't do it alone. Saying thank you acknowledges that someone met your need, that you were momentarily dependent on their kindness. Both admit a level of need and reliance, which build connection rather than asserting total independence.
And being honest about what you need or expect in a relationship, even if it feels risky because they might say no or not meet it, that can actually make things better in the long run.
Absolutely. It tells the other person what's really going on inside you, your needs, boundaries, desires. You're giving them the map they need to understand you and potentially connect with you in a way that truly matters. It feels vulnerable, putting your needs out there, but it's essential for clarity and for building a relationship based on reality, not just guesswork.
Okay, so better personal health, deeper relationships. Now let's tackle the workplace. This often feels like the final frontier for vulnerability. The whole idea of professionalism seems designed to keep vulnerability out.
You're absolutely right. It's often where that cultural conditioning against showing weakness is the absolute strongest. That conventional definition of professional often implies you shouldn't show fear or uncertainty or even too much excitement. You definitely shouldn't admit you're helpless or don't know something.
Right. The expectation is cool competence. Always have the answer.
Exactly. But the sources make a really strong case that bringing vulnerability into the workplace isn't just nice. It's actually essential for building healthy, innovative, and truly effective teams and organizations today.
How does that work? How does vulnerability actually make a team better?
Fundamentally, it builds trust and psychological safety. Psychological safety is this shared belief within a team that it's okay to take interpersonal risks.
Meaning
Meaning you feel confident you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up with a half-formed idea or asking a question that might seem basic or raising a concern or admitting you made a mistake. When people feel psychologically safe, they can be themselves, they can learn, they can mess up without fearing dire consequences. And that is the absolute bedrock for learning, growth, and real collaboration.
So if a leader says, I don't know the answer, or oops, I messed that up, that doesn't make them look weak in this view. It builds trust.
Precisely. When a leader is willing to say, you know what, I'm not sure what to do here, or I made a mistake on that project and here's what I learned, it doesn't scream incompetence. It actually makes them seem more human, more relatable, much more approachable.
It shows humility.
It shows humility and it invites collaboration. When the leader says, I don't know, it creates space for others to step up and say, okay, well, maybe we can figure it out together. Leaders who share struggles, admit they don't have all the answers, or own up to mistakes, they don't just build rapport. They actively cultivate a culture of authenticity, shared responsibility, and trust across the whole team.
That must be incredibly powerful for how a team functions, normalizing imperfection and tackling problems together.
It really is. This increased trust and safety directly encourages people to step out of their comfort zones. They feel safer, suggesting new, maybe unconventional ideas. They're more willing to give and receive honest feedback without fearing it'll wreck relationships or careers. They feel okay admitting they need help or they've hit a wall.
And that leads to
Significantly higher employee engagement, much better communication, smoother collaboration, and ultimately better performance and results. Plus, psychological safety is absolutely crucial for making things like diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives actually work. When people feel safe bringing their whole selves, including different perspectives or challenging experiences, that directly aligns with DEI goals.
You mentioned innovation, too. How does vulnerability link to that?
Well, think about it. Innovation rarely blossoms in places where everyone's scared to speak up or fail. Creative solutions often come from slightly uncomfortable conversations, from challenging how things are usually done, from sharing ideas that might sound a bit out there at first.
Right, you need space to experiment.
Exactly. Sharing failures, analyzing what went wrong openly, learning from it together that fosters a culture of learning and creativity. Risk-taking is just part of innovation, whether it's a new product or a new process. And that risk-taking thrives when vulnerability is accepted, when you're not terrified of being shot down or penalized for trying something that doesn't pan out.
The story about the entry-level person sharing his salary is such a striking example of this in action.
It really is. Here's someone relatively junior, noticing a lack of transparency about pay, wanting more open communication. So he does something incredibly brave and vulnerable.
He just put his number out there first.
He modeled the behavior. He said, essentially, I'll go first. And that single authentic act of vulnerability had a ripple effect. It showed courage, integrity, and it inspired every other manager in that meeting to also share their salary. His willingness to be exposed, to take that risk, sparked collective action and opened the door for real conversations about fairer pay. It's a fantastic illustration of how vulnerability, even not from the top leader, can model integrity and drive positive change.
Okay, so we've got compelling evidence for benefits to personal well-being, deeper relationships, and more effective, innovative workplaces. It all sounds great, but knowing this doesn't magically make it easy, does it? It still feels incredibly hard, and we still seem to judge ourselves way more harshly than we judge others for being vulnerable.
Absolutely. And this brings us to a really key psychological finding called the beautiful mess effect.
The beautiful mess effect. What's that?
It basically describes this pattern where we tend to look at other people's moments of vulnerability quite positively. We see their courage, their realness, their humanity. We might even see the beauty in their openness.
Yeah, you might think, wow, that took guts.
Exactly. But when we are the ones being vulnerable, we tend to zoom in on the perceived weakness, the fear, the awkwardness, and the mess, we are almost always our own toughest critics in those moments.
So the way we see our own vulnerability is much harsher than how others see it or how we see theirs.
Often, yes. Significantly harsher. And this internal hurdle, this self-judgment, is why self-compassion is highlighted so strongly in the sources as a crucial internal resource, an engine really, for navigating and ultimately embracing vulnerability. The research suggests self-compassion is the key factor that helps lessen this beautiful mess effect.
How does it lessen it?
It helps bridge that gap between how we see ourselves and how others likely see us. It brings our self-perception closer to reality.
Okay, let's just quickly refresh on what self-compassion actually means in this context.
Sure. So self-compassion, as defined in this research, has three main parts. First is self-kindness. Basically, treating yourself with warmth and understanding when you're having a hard time or notice flaws, instead of harsh self-criticism.
Being nice to yourself.
Essentially, yes. Second is common humanity. Recognizing that suffering, failure, feeling inadequate, being vulnerable, these are all part of the shared human experience. Everyone goes through this stuff. You're not uniquely flawed or alone in it.
Okay, so not isolating yourself.
Right. And third is mindfulness. Maintaining a balanced awareness of your difficult thoughts and feelings without either suppressing them or getting totally swept away by them. Observing them without judgment, without exaggerating their importance, is basically treating yourself like you treat a good friend who is struggling.
Okay, self-kindness, common humanity, mindfulness. So how does practicing that help specifically with feeling vulnerable?
Well, the research, which looked at several different studies and situations, shows that self-compassion significantly dials down the intensity of that beautiful mess effect. It helps close that perception gap.
So you see your own vulnerability less harshly.
Yes. It doesn't mean you suddenly see yourself as perfect or fearless, but it lets you view your vulnerability with more clarity and kindness, more like how a supportive, non-judgmental friend might see it.
And how does it work? What's the mechanism?
According to the studies, self-compassion acts like a powerful emotional buffer. It helps you cope more constructively with the tough emotions, the fear, the anxiety, maybe the shame that naturally come up when you choose to be vulnerable. It doesn't make the fear vanish, but it helps you relate to it with less self-attack and more acceptance. This makes the act feel less overwhelming and the aftermath less filled with self-recrimination.
And this was seen across different kinds of vulnerability in the studies.
Yes, they tested it in various scenarios. Things like confessing romantic feelings first, or revealing insecurities about your body, or admitting you made a mistake. In each situation, people higher in self-compassion were significantly less likely to judge their own vulnerability negatively. They could see their own courageous act with more kindness and acceptance.
And it's important to note, right, that this isn't just about having high self-esteem or generally being less anxious.
That's a crucial distinction the researchers make. While self-compassion often correlates with higher self-esteem and lower neuroticism, general tendency towards negative feelings, its function is unique. Self-esteem can be fragile. It often depends on success. It can plummet right when you fail or feel imperfect, precisely when you're vulnerable.
So self-compassion kicks in when self-esteem might fail you.
Exactly. It offers support precisely in those moments of imperfection. It helps you get back up. And unlike neuroticism, which is more about a general disposition, self-compassion is an active way of relating to your difficult experiences with kindness. It's a coping mechanism rooted in self-care, helping you process constructively instead of getting stuck.
So self-compassion isn't about pretending you're great. It's about seeing your own vulnerability more clearly, less judgmentally, treating yourself with basic kindness, which then makes it easier to actually face those moments.
That's a great summary. It equips you emotionally to navigate vulnerable situations with more resilience, allowing you to be present with the discomfort without getting totally knocked off course by self-criticism.
Okay, this is really helpful. We get why it's hard, why it's necessary, the costs of avoiding it, the huge benefits of embracing it, and how self-compassion is a vital tool. So how do we actually start doing this? It still feels like a pretty big mountain to climb.
It absolutely isn't somewhere you just suddenly arrive. The sources really stress that learning to embrace vulnerability is a practice. It's a journey, an uphill climb, as one source called it. It's a skill you build over time, definitely not a switch you just flip.
Okay, so small steps.
Small steps. But there are concrete, actionable things you can do, both for yourself as an individual and also within groups, like at work.
What's the absolute first step someone can take? Where do you even begin?
The most fundamental thing, really, the foundation for everything else, is simply acknowledging your emotions. You can't express or process or share feelings if you're actively pretending they're not there or trying to cover them up.
Like we talked about with suppression being harmful.
Exactly. The James Gross study showed the cost. So the very first act of sort of internal vulnerability is just becoming aware of what you're genuinely feeling in a given moment, even if it's uncomfortable, and allowing yourself to feel it. Just noticing and naming it, okay, I'm feeling anxious right now, or I'm feeling disappointed, that's a critical start.
Okay, so notice and name the feeling. Don't stuff it down. What else?
A really powerful, direct way to practice external vulnerability is asking for help. Think back to that opening story, the man choking. Asking for help shows you recognize your limits, you don't have all the answers, you're willing to rely on others. It pushes back against that cultural pressure to be fiercely independent.
And paradoxically, it strengthens connections.
Often, yes. It fosters connection and gives others the chance to feel helpful and needed, which most people actually like.
And practicing self-compassion has to be woven through all of this.
Absolutely essential. As we discussed, it's key for how you respond to your own vulnerable moments, internally or externally. Treat yourself kindly when you stumble, feel scared, make a mistake. Don't let that harsh inner critic take over like the beautiful mess effect tempts us to do. Remind yourself, okay, this is hard, and it's okay that it's hard. It's human.
Journaling could help here.
Journaling can be a fantastic, safe, private space to practice acknowledging emotions and showing yourself compassion before you feel ready to share with others. Writing about your thoughts and feelings, even briefly, taps into that revealing is healing power.
Okay. What about actually interacting with other people?
Engage in open communication. This means being more transparent about your thoughts, feelings, needs, and expectations in your relationships. Now, this doesn't mean dumping everything on everyone all the time.
Right, appropriate sharing.
With trusted people, yes. Practice expressing yourself authentically, even if it feels exposed because you might not get the reaction you hope for. It prevents misunderstandings and builds real trust over time. And remember, your openness often creates the safety for others to be open with you too. It can start a positive cycle.
And learning from others who do this well.
Yes, find role models. Observe people who seem genuinely authentic and engaged, often because their actions match their values. Watch how they handle difficult conversations or vulnerable moments. Examples like that person sharing their salary can be really inspiring and show that it is possible and can lead to good things.
Okay, so for individuals, acknowledge feelings, ask for help, practice self-compassion, communicate openly, find role models. How do these ideas translate into the workplace setting?
Well, in the workplace, fostering vulnerability often needs to start from the top. Leadership modeling is huge. Leaders have to be willing to go first, to be vulnerable themselves.
Now,
Sharing personal stories appropriately, admitting when things are difficult, acknowledging mistakes, asking for input when they genuinely don't have the answers. That's the most powerful way to build trust and signal to everyone else that it's safe to do the same. Culture change really flows down from leadership behavior.
and creating those safe spaces you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely foundational for psychological safety. Organizations need practical ways to allow open, honest dialogue without fear. Maybe structured things like daily team check-ins where people can share how they're really doing, not just a status update. Or anonymous feedback channels. Or running brainstorming sessions where truly all ideas are welcomed initially without judgment. These practices signal that openness and risk-taking are valued.
Encouraging storytelling to build empathy, too.
Yes, definitely. Creating opportunities maybe in team meetings or workshops for people to share a bit about their personal journeys, challenges, or different perspectives helps colleagues see each other as whole people, not just job titles. That builds empathy, understanding, and makes the team feel more supportive when someone is vulnerable.
And this isn't just a one-off training session, is it?
Oh, absolutely not. Building a culture of trust and safety takes ongoing effort. Continuous learning and development around things like emotional intelligence, communication skills, inclusion, these are needed to sustain it. It's about constantly reinforcing the value of authenticity and safety.
So it's not just about us being willing to be vulnerable, but also how we react when someone else takes that leap with us.
This is such a critical piece and often overlooked. How we receive vulnerability is just as important as how we express our own. The sources offer a really strong caution here. Resist that immediate urge to try and rescue the other person from their pain or discomfort when they open up.
What does that rescue impulse look like in practice?
Oh, it shows up in lots of ways. Maybe immediately downplaying their feelings. Oh, it's not that bad, or you'll be fine. Or jumping in with quick fixes and unsolicited advice. Here's what you need to do.
trying to solve it for them?
Or maybe changing the subject because their vulnerability is making you uncomfortable, or even seemingly kind things like rushing to hand them a tissue to try and stop them from crying. While usually well-intentioned, these reactions can actually shut the person down and make them feel like their vulnerability wasn't okay.
Why is minimizing or fixing it harmful?
Because trying to pull them out of their difficult feelings too quickly basically short-circuits their own process of feeling and making sense of those emotions. It can make them feel unheard, misunderstood, or like their feelings are just too much for you. It can unintentionally invalidate the courage it took for them to share in the first place.
So what should we do instead? What's the better response?
The main guidance is to simply be present. Listen deeply, without judgment. Allow them the space to have their full experience, their emotions, their vulnerability, without you needing to fix it or rush them through it. Your job is just to hold that space for them, to witness their experience with kindness and respect.
Just listen and be there.
Sharing that raw, personal part of themselves is, as one source put it, a hard-earned blessing they're offering you. Your presence and acceptance are often the most powerful and healing response you can give. It actually requires your own quiet vulnerability, being willing to sit with their discomfort, and maybe your own, without needing to jump in and make it all better immediately.
That sounds simple, but it feels incredibly hard to do sometimes.
It really does. And it just underscores the idea that this whole shift, moving from fearing vulnerability to practicing both expressing it and receiving it with presence and compassion, is absolutely an uphill climb. It's a struggle. It takes effort. It requires practice. It's not some state of blissful surrender for those of us. It's an active choice you have to keep making.
Like learning any really hard skill.
Exactly. There's a great analogy mentioned in the sources, sometimes used in couples counseling. Learning vulnerability is like a child learning to walk.
Okay.
You will stumble, you will fall down, you will make mistakes, you won't nail it every single time. But the key is to pick yourself back up. Show yourself that self-compassion we talked about. Don't beat yourself up for falling and just keep practicing. It's a fundamental human capacity, but like learning to walk upright took humanity ages. Developing this takes time and effort. Be patient and kind with yourself and with others as you navigate it.
But from perspective, it's not about achieving perfect vulnerability, but committing to the ongoing practice.
It truly is. It's about learning to default towards connection, authenticity, and understanding, rather than defaulting towards fear, hiding, and defensiveness.
So to kind of wrap this all up, this deep dive into the sources really confirms, without a doubt, that vulnerability is absolutely not weakness.
They're not even close. It is the courageous act of letting yourself be seen, truly and authentically, for who you are, imperfections, struggles, emotions, all of it. And that act is a fundamental, non-negotiable source of strength for building real connection with other people and cultivating deep inner resilience within ourselves.
We've walked through how deliberately choosing vulnerability brings significant real benefits. Better personal well-being, less stress, even better physical health, the chance to build much deeper, more meaningful relationships based on trust and real intimacy, increased authenticity and resilience, which frees up so much energy from hiding or pretending.
And we saw how it transforms groups too, fostering that essential trust and psychological safety in workplaces, leading to more effective teams, higher engagement, better communication, and more innovation. It creates environments where people feel safe enough to bring their best ideas and their whole selves, which fundamentally supports things like diversity and inclusion too.
And consistently, the research points to self-compassion not just as a helpful extra, but as a vital tool for this whole journey, helping us manage our own fears and judgments around being vulnerable, helping bridge that beautiful mess effect.
Ultimately, the ability to be vulnerable and then to be loved and accepted for who you genuinely are with all your messy, imperfect, wonderful humanity is one of life's deepest, most validating experiences. It's the most direct route to feeling like you truly belong. And maybe most powerfully, it tells yourself that you are acceptable and worthy, just as you are.
And that leaves us with that final thought, circling back to the cost of not doing this. If you try to keep those walls built high, if you try to selectively numb those uncomfortable feelings that come with opening up the fear, the shame, the uncertainty, the sources strongly suggest you inevitably numb your capacity for the very feelings you probably crave most. Joy, gratitude, happiness, excitement, deep connection.
So as you think about everything we've explored in this deep dive, maybe consider this. If numbing the hard stuff also means numbing the good stuff, What vibrant experiences, what genuine connections, what opportunities for growth, healing, and maybe even innovation might you be missing out on by keeping those defenses up so high?
Maybe just consider one small step you could take today. Maybe just acknowledging an emotion without judging it, asking for help with something small, or practicing a moment of self-compassion when you notice an imperfection, just one small step, to show up a little more fully, a little more authentically, a little more vulnerably in your own life. It might just be the medicine you need.
This has been The Deep Dive.